Na hii ni KTN News.
Welcome back. You are watching KTN Newsdesk. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, KPMG, the firm mandated to audit Kenya's voter register, is currently releasing its audit report on the voters register. Currently speaking is the CEO of KPMG, Josephat Mwaura. Let's cross over there to that stakeholders meeting between KPMG, IEBC, and other field players, and just listening to what the CEO has to say.
Of the audit to stakeholders, and I expect this is why we have this event today, because initially our work was going to end with the presentation of the report to IEBC. IEBC commences implementation and presenting to Parliament, but having listened to stakeholders, the IEBC has then asked for this process of communication to various stakeholders. The other request was a reconciliation of the register that was presented to us for audit and the register that will be finally certified as part of that communication. And finally, there was a request for post-implementation review. And this is again informed by that mistrust of the IEBC. Basically, there are people who are then asking us to say, right, because we don't believe the IEBC, can you come back and confirm that all the recommendations that you made have been implemented and the effect they have had on the register? So these are all recommendations which the IEBC is now looking at in terms of what happens next to address the issues arising from the audit. A review of the legal framework. We wanted to very quickly talk about this. And again, the Constitution is very clear. And this is something that Kenyans need to actually appreciate, that the power lies with the people. But the people have to be able to exercise that power by choosing to register as voters, by choosing to participate in elections, by choosing to hold various arms of government to account. That is secure in the Constitution. The IEBC enjoys that elevated position in the Constitution as the custodian of the power of the people and to various institutions. And the Commission also enjoys very clear constitutional mandate on the audit of the register. So you are very clear that, in fact, the law that was passed was facilitative rather than originating the mandate. There are a number of legal and institutional issues that need to be addressed in terms of coordination to enhance the accuracy of the register of voters. First of all, the law that was cited in the Act is actually not yet operational, so we had to go below the institutions that are supposed to be working under that law. Secondly, the whole area of registration of persons, from registration of birth to the issuance of IDs, the issuance of passports, the registration of voters, to the registration of deaths. That process needs to be rationalized and include what we are suggesting to be a unique identifier that you can use to trace somebody from the register of births to the register of deaths and to the register of voters, which currently does not exist, which makes the exercise somewhat difficult. Laws and regulations, especially around the registration of voters, there are a number of recommendations that we have made to the IEBC about enhancing this process so that it's very clear how you register as a voter and how that data gets into the system. Giving effect to the disqualification criteria under Article 3, if you are a judge to be of unsound mind or you have been convicted of an electoral offense, you are supposed to be disqualified from registration as a voter. But currently there are no formal mechanisms for obtaining information on who is adjudged to be of unsound mind or who has been convicted, and that's a process that needs to be put in place. Transfer of voters is a process that was prone to abuse, and we have made recommendations, and we have seen the regulations actually now coming into 2017 have provided for some control around that.
CEO of KPMG, Josephat Maura, there releasing the audit report of the voters' register ahead of the August 8th polls. We will be telling you how that goes. Now, the much-awaited presidential debates have been set for July 10th, 17th and 24th at the Catholic University of East Africa. According to the Debates Media Limited, the sessions are primarily meant to afford candidates an opportunity to explain their position on key national issues to the public. Now, the rules of engagement will require the debate to focus on matters of good governance, human rights and national unity, democracy, among others. During the 90-minute sessions, candidates will also be required to adhere to a number of rules of engagement that require them to be civil, speak only English and Swahili, articulate points within a 90-second time frame, minus any derogatory language. Moderators are also expected to demonstrate fairness, impartiality and objectivity. Well, and meanwhile, 6 presidential candidates have something to say about the whole plan of the presidential debate to be held in July, led by Kuro Okot, one of the candidates. They're currently speaking. Let's listen in.
The presidential debate will only be minimized to only 2 candidates. We thought it was a joke until the newspaper carried the story today on page 11. You can see on page 11 of that newspaper what they're actually reporting as a presidential debate and the conditions they have put. So we will address this issue from 3 perspectives. I will focus on the legal and probably constitutional aspect of this. Professor Wainaina will handle the political angle, and Emmanuel Nzai will speak something about the agenda for Kenya going forward and why this is offending all those 3 aspects of the law, the politics, and the country. Now, if I may start, we've looked at the principles that will guide the presidential debate. We note that some of them are, just to mention, good governance, fairness, integrity, independence, transparency, and accountability. Actually, they have lifted Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya as a guiding principle to this debate. They also talk of equity, human rights, and human dignity. In other words, they have involved Chapter 4, the Bill of Rights, on how this presidential debate shall be held. They have also talked about national unity, the rule of law, democracy, and participation of the people of Kenya. Again, another aspect of the Constitution, sustainability. So why are we raising all these concerns? From a legal and constitutional point of view, even looking at the principles alone, if you go to the part where they talk about the selection criteria for candidates, where they insist that a candidate must be constitutionally eligible to run for office of president and holder of formal clearance from the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission of Kenya, the 3 of us you see seated here were actually cleared by law. So we met the criteria in the Elections Act and in the IEBC Act, as well as Article 137 of the Kenya Constitution, which requires, which is the qualifications for anyone to run for presidential candidate. So we agree with them that you must be constitutionally eligible to run for office, which is what we have met. But where we have a serious problem is where they say that you must have attained at least 5% of popular support countrywide, based on some opinion polls or research firms. They have also not disclosed to us who are these research firms, but we will tell you who we think they are shortly. So in other words, this selection criteria alone contradicts even the guiding principles of this debate, which are really constitutional. It offends a number of our laws. Number 1, it offends the Constitution of Kenya, particularly the Bill of Rights, issues to do with equality, non-discrimination, and it also offends the principles of governance. They're talking about transparency, accountability. This is all in the Constitution. So how is it that you can say that this debate would follow good governance, the Constitution, yet you choose to discriminate on the 8 candidates who have been cleared by IEBC, who've met the constitutional test and the legal test? This debate, going by the way they are proposing, will also offend the Elections Act of Kenya, It will also offend the Media Act, which mandates all media houses to actually give balanced reporting of all presidential candidates, equal airtime to all presidential candidates. So if you're going to use the media as the medium for projecting the views, the policies, the presidency of all these candidates, that's an oxymoron, because the Media Act requires of you to be fair and equal to all candidates, yet you are saying you're going to weed out the 6 other candidates and only allow 2. And by the way, in the same newspaper, KTN, you have actually published evidence of why the people you prefer, in this particular case, the top 2, whoever those are, we don't even know yet who those top 2 are, have actually failed this guy. But I'll touch on the one who is running the government today, who is President Uhuru. If you look at page 3 of the Standard, one of your principles talks about good governance, human rights, and human dignity. But if you look at page 3, there is an article there titled Tearful Tribute to Fallen AP Officers. Kenya, since Jubilee government took over, has lost over 500 Kenyans. So it has not been able to protect human rights, which you want to use as a guiding principle. It has not upheld the rule of law, which you want to use as a guiding principle. So on the same, you're giving us guiding principles on this presidential debate based on human rights and all that. But at the same time, you're also giving us evidence why you must exclude, at the very first, President Uhuru at least, because his government has even failed to live up to the Constitution. As you go into this presidential debate, we'll be talking about compliance with the Constitution. But for example, the gender rule. Jubilee government has not even made the gender principle. So this is a person you want to uplift, whose status you want to uplift to all this, to do this debate, while at the same time he has actually offended the Constitution. So we know why this is happening. Before I welcome Professor Wainaina, we know this has been part of the media narrative. And I say it's part of the media narrative because the organizers of this presidential debate are actually the mainstream media houses. In fact, I think the co-chairs are the CEOs of the media houses. We are not stupid as candidates, and Kenyans are not stupid. We also know who owns the media in Kenya, who owns the various media houses that are organizing for this debate. So you might as well just say, let's use our various media houses to advance the interests of the two presidential candidates you have. So let's be honest about this. The media needs to change its mindset. This idea that this is a two-horse race is absolute nonsense, because we have complied with the constitution of this country, with the laws of this country. 8 candidates have been given a clearance certificate to go and campaign out there. That is the law in Kenya. So to attempt to discriminate or to weed out the 6 other candidates actually offends the constitution. We also know who are the 2 pollsters they want to use. Our research shows us that Infotrack and Ipsos are the 2 research houses, the pollsters they're going to use. We know that Infotrack is biased, is pro-NASA. We know that Ipsos is biased, is pro-Jubilee. So if you're going to use the same media, research pollsters, to advance the fact that it's only President Uhuru and Jubilee and NASA and Raila who are going to be in the debate, that already is a discrimination. It's choreographed. The whole thing is organized. But I'll tell you this: well, if they go ahead with this misguided decision, we will go to court. We will stop the presidential debate. If the only fair ground is to let everybody then go out there and hunt for their votes. But we are not going to use the media, the presidential debate docket, to advance the interests of only 2 fellows who we think have even failed this country. One has failed to uphold the constitution. His government has orchestrated even the death of so many Kenyans. We're talking about the price of unga today, the failure of policy. That's a failure on the part of the person you want to advance. The other one has failed because he has not even lived up to a government in waiting or a proper opposition. So we will go to court if push comes to pull to stop the presidential debate. But we hope this is just another joke in the newspapers today. I now want to invite Professor Wainaina to speak on the political angle before Nzai speaks about the country.
Well, a number of the presidential candidates led by Ekuru Aukot talking about some of the details on the program of the presidential debate scheduled for July 10th, 17th and 24th, saying it's going to discriminate a number of the candidates. The pollsters and research companies that are going to be used are very, very biased, and they feel like some of the candidates will not get their constitutional rights of getting fair coverage as presidential candidates. And that press briefing continues there. But let's move on to other things. Wavinya Ndeti, who hopes to become the next governor for the county of Machakos, has now filed an appeal challenging the IEBC following the nullification of her nomination. Wavinya moved to the High Court today, just a day after the IEBC Disputes Resolutions Tribunal nullified her nomination to contest for the Machakos gubernatorial post on a Wiper ticket and revoked her nomination certificate. In its ruling, the IEBC tribunal, led by Chairman Wafula Chebukati, said Wavinya committed an electoral offence by being a member of two political parties at the same time. In a certificate of urgency, Wavinya argues that the decision violates her right to participate in public elections and further threatens to violate the political rights of people of Machakos County to freely elect a person of their choice as a governor. She wants the court to direct IEBC to include her name in the candidates list to be published in the Kenya Gazette. All right, moving on, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission is raising a red flag over the re-emergence of criminal gangs and armed militia in the run-up to the general election. And as KTN News' Ashley Mazuri now reports, the commission reveals that it has acquired state-of-the-art equipment with the ability to shut down social media sites that will be found to spread hate speech.
With just 59 days to the August 8th general election, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission revealed it has been monitoring criminal groups and has shared the information with security agencies. According to the 4th Annual State of National Security, the heightening political temperature has seen the resurgence of criminal gangs, political goons and militias. Speaking during the Peace, Cohesion and Security Forum, former member of the Committee of Experts, Abdirashid Abdullahi, cautioned Kenyans against falling into the trap of the campaign euphoria, where politicians whip up tribal emotions to win votes.
Each of the above agencies must play their roles and carry out their mandate without fear or favor during their campaigns and on election day. And if there is total breakdown of law and order, then we know who to blame. That's the DCA and the police, IEBC, Communication Authority of Kenya, all those agencies, because you pay them. It's through your own taxes.
They need to come together in order to protect their perceived interests, whether individually or collectively. Because without that coming together, they'll be in constant warfare.
Dr. Shem Ochwotho, who spoke on behalf of Kenyans in the diaspora, said the exclusion of majority of Kenyans living out of the country may raise serious credible issues.
They also belong, they are New Kenya, kama wengine. So that's why we think you need to think of them. It's unfortunate they'll not vote this election, but moving forward, when we start to push for more diaspora to vote, we request that you support us.
The member of the committee that worked on the current constitution says that the IEBC must work to ensure that Kenyans have confidence in the conduct of the election. He says anything less than 80% confidence levels in the electoral body could spell doom. Ashley Mazuri, KTN News.
Civil society groups today have held a public forum to critique the prospects of gains made through the construction of the standard gauge railway. The event, termed A Ride to Freedom with SGR or Mortgaging Our Future, has been organized by the African Center for Open Governance, AFRICOG, and the Kenyans for Peace with Truth and Justice. The groups have raised concern over the increased government borrowing to fund such mega projects, insisting that the over 1 trillion public debt will do the country more harm than good in the long term.
There was no business case for a new standard gauge railway line on a new alignment. New alignment means on a new way live, somewhere else. Because Kenya Railways owns a lot of land all the way from Mombasa to the border. So why buy more land?
How much will it have cost to refurbish our existing rail? Something that the President has said that they are still going to do. It works out at about 40 million shillings per kilometer. It would have worked out to about $30 billion. Now we're talking about $1 trillion, maybe $2 trillion. Why did we sink and continue to sink so much money if the purpose is to move cargo at 80, passengers at 120, and axle minimum 20 tons per axle? Please notice, there is a new, clear, loud emphasis on the delights of passenger train travel to and from Mombasa, as if that was the principal reason we spent such a horrendous amount of money. And remember what George has just said, Kenyans are making jokes about it. Syokimau is 4 hours away from the beach.
Now, various promises are being fronted by both Jubilee and NASA presidential candidates in regard to the improvement of education as the country gears up for the August 8th polls. Among the promises made is the provision of a free secondary education. But how sustainable will this program be? Robert Wanyonyi looks into the issue.
As we arrive at Sigalame Boys High School, Nibusia County, it's apparent that we are at a busy learning environment. Even with the sound of the chirping birds, students are busy in class with the Form 4 candidates preparing for their NDA exams. Amidst all the activities, there are still some ongoing construction works at the school, all this courtesy of the institution's Parents Teachers Association and other well-wishers.
This school does well in KCSE exams. It's the best boys' school in the county. Under the able leadership of the principal, Mr. Joseph Were.
And as the political campaigns gather pace with many promises being made, we venture into the delicate trending topic whereby secondary schools are said to reap from some expected funding should either the Jubilee or NASA governments come into place.
The 5,000, in my own opinion, and looking at the experience I've had, may not suffice, may not be enough. We shall be forced to look for other avenues like income-generating projects, which we already have some, well-wishers, donors, so that to supplement that.
Both Jubilee and NASA leaders have promised some bit of funding to schools that will go towards the free secondary education should they form the next government. But according to the stakeholders in the sector, implementation might prove to be a major issue here.
We appreciate the government's input. Of course, it's with quite a number of challenges also. Disbursement of the funds that the government promised also don't flow in as expected. And that's an issue on our side of budgeting and procurement of goods and services.
Loosely calculated, each student stands to receive a total of Kenya shillings 5,000 per term as funding from the government. But how sustainable is this figure? The principal of St. Joseph's Boys National School in Trans Nzoia County, Peter Obwogo, states,
we are talking about free education in secondary school. I know a lot of discussions have been made, but the wearer of the shoe knows where it pinches most. Can we get back to the school equipment program, where an assessment is made in the school by the government to determine how many textbooks we require, how many exercise books do we require?
According to Obogo, even the national schools that were elevated to the status 2 years ago by the government are still struggling financially when it comes to infrastructural development.
As national schools, we are really suffering. This is a boarding school, and we want to appreciate the fact that the government, even today, is offering all the tuition activities in the school. If the parents do not pay, is it sustainable? I want to thank them for the infrastructure money which they gave us. We were told that was the first tranche. 5 years down the line, we are still waiting for the balance because we were given 25 million. We used it. There is a balance of 23.
But even with the stakeholders lamenting over their non-involvement in the expected rollout of the new education program, they are all in agreement that the recent changes initiated in the sector are good for the country.
How I wish we were in a boardroom where I was being asked, what is it that we can be able to do in order to sustain this?
He has brought sanity in the education sector. When I use the word sanity, it is self-explanatory, and every Kenyan knows for himself or ourselves that actually our education system was going down to the dogs.
What I would wish to advise is, can a consultative meeting be held with the stakeholders and particularly involve, one, the school management.
Even with promises by politicians that they will introduce free secondary education if Kenyans support them during the August polls, investigations by KTN News has established that this might just be another drop in the ocean, and parents will still be required to chip in for their children in school. Robert Wanyonyi, KTN News in Busia County.
Well, that story by Robert Wanyonyi wraps it up for us here on KTN Newsdesk. Many thanks for staying with us. Remember, some of the top stories that we continue to follow up on is the NASA rally in Taita Taveta County. President Uhuru Kenyatta is in Uasin Gishu County today. He's just presided over the pass-out parade of Kenya Defense Forces recruits. Wavinya Ndeti has filed an appeal to the High Court after the IEBC nullified her nomination to be the candidate of Wiper for the gubernatorial race in Machakos County, as well as the audit firm KPMG today formally releases the audit report on Kenya's voters register with just 59 days to go to the general election. These are some of the top stories we are following up for you. But up next, Peter Wakab